You'd hear him before you even saw him. The click-clack-thud sound drifting from Grandpa's shed. That wasn't him tinkering, it was the symphony of resourcefulness. While the world was in a hurry to buy new, Grandpa saw potential in the rusty, the forgotten, the seemingly useless. He never needed a big budget or a young back to create beauty in the garden, and neither do you. Just a few forgotten gems and that spark of creativity. Join us as we wander down memory lane and uncover 25 brilliant ways Grandpa reused old junk for the garden, each one a lesson in seeing the world a little differently. Number 25. Leaky galvanized buckets into cascading blooms. Remember those old galvanized buckets with rust holes weeping like the sad Tin Man in Wizard of Oz? Well, Grandpa took a few pages out of Dorothy's book. He didn't see a flaw. He saw character. So he'd drill a few more holes for more drainage if needed, fill it with soil, and tuck in trailing nasturtiums that spilled right over the edges like liquid sunshine. Perched on a tree stump, arranged haphazardly near the compost, or hung outside by the patio, these rusty old buckets became bright waterfalls of color. Even the rust added to the character. Seeing these beautiful flowers spill out of something once destined for the scrap heap was quite the feeling. Number 24. Worn-out work boots into quirky planters. What do you do when your work boots finally give up the ghost? Toss them out, right? Well, for Grandpa's boots, even with the soles flapping and the leather cracked, they still didn't end up in the bin. He gave them a new lease on life. He'd stuff a fistful of gravel in each toe for drainage. Plants need room to breathe, just like your feet. He'd then fill them with soil and nestle in tough little succulents, hens and chicks, or some cheeky violas right in each boot opening. Picture this, a pair planted up, laces dangling, maybe even a tiny garden gnome peeking out. Instant whimsy. These were once boots that trudged through harvests, wiping dirt off their toes. Now they're walking even prettier. If your knees and back aren't what they once were, this is an easy way to add beauty to your garden. Number 23. Busted bicycle wheel into pea and bean tower. Remember that bicycle you outgrew? Grandpa knew just how to salvage its skeleton. Those rusty spokes and bent rim? Perfect. All he'd have to do is drive a tall, sturdy cedar stake deep into the soil. Then he'd thread that wobbly bicycle wheel horizontally onto the stake, about 2 to 3 feet up, and voila. Now, pea and bean tendrils had a great lattice to climb. Tendrils would snake up the spokes, clinging tight even after spring thunderstorms. By July, your childhood scrap had become a teetering tower of lovely purple blossoms and pods. Sometimes he'd add another wheel higher up for more ambitious climbers. Simple, effective, and recycled, right down to the rusty spokes. Number 22. Worn-out garden hoses into custom soaker hoses. That hose with more leaks than a sieve? Grandpa wasn't done with it yet. He gave it a leaky lifeline, and all it took were a few more well-placed holes. Here's Grandpa's hose salvation technique. He'd connect one end securely, then use a hot nail to carefully poke small holes along its length, especially in areas that'd lie near plant roots. And that was pretty much it. No hassle whatsoever. Once connected to the faucet with the pressure low, this old sprinkler hose now became a custom soaker hose. Buried underneath the mulch along the tomato row, it slowly watered the plants through its entire length, allowing for efficient irrigation of the soil. Slow, steady, silent, and trustworthy, just like Grandpa. And he still wasn't done. Shorter lengths were split open lengthwise and staked around garden beds as flexible, protective edging. So you get a 2-for-1 deal from a busted garden hose. It doesn't get more resourceful than that. Number 21. Chipped ceramic crocks and bowls into herb havens or fairy gardens. Even Grandma's pantry wasn't safe from Grandpa's tinkering and resourcefulness. Remember those giant mixing bowls with the crack? Or that one crock that held 1,000 cookie batches, missing a handle? Grandpa also had a plan for them. When it broke, Grandma sighed. Grandpa, though, saw miniature worlds. He'd layer gravel soil and then create tiny landscapes with moss, miniature plants like baby tears or thyme, little pebble paths, and maybe even a tiny mirror for a pond. Suddenly, that thimble-sized terracotta pot became a lovely miniature garden. The thyme became its trees, and kids couldn't wait to see what Grandpa could create next when one of Grandma's pantry bowls cracked. So, stop throwing out broken bowls. Create some whimsy right in your garden. Get your kids involved, too. Number 20. Wooden crates to garden shelves. You found them leaning against the shed, dusty and forgotten. Those sturdy wooden crates were Grandma's trusted allies during harvest time. She'd line them with gingham and fill them with produce and mason jars. But what happened when the slats loosened and the nails rusted? That's when Grandpa got that look. Rather than leave them tucked away in the garage gathering dust or throw them out, he'd give them a new purpose. He'd drag them into the sun, stack 2 or 3 of them against the wall or the garden fence, fasten them together with a few screws or some garden wire, and in no time he'd have created rustic, charming shelves, perfect for herbs, potted flowers, or storing garden tools. Number 19. Colanders as hanging planters. Let's peek into Grandma's kitchen again, shall we? Ever wondered what to do with those old metal colanders just taking up space in your kitchen cupboard? Well, Grandpa always had a plan for them. They were perfect for plants. Where you saw just holes, Grandpa saw built-in drainage, the kind that never lets roots get soggy feet. And here's all he had to do. He'd line the inside with a bit of coconut fiber or a handful of moss peeled right off the side of the barn, add some potting soil and 2 scoops from the compost pile, and plant his favorite flowers. He attached a few sturdy chains or a couple of strands of baling wire. Lastly, he'd thread wires through the holes, twist them into a messy crown, and hang it from the porch eave. He'd just created vintage-style hanging planters out of a colander at no extra cost. You can try it too with that dented aluminum sieve, the one that sifted flour for your birthday cake, or the chipped enamel colander stained eternally pink from beetroot. Number 18. Milk crates into veggie beds. Grandpa often had a slight problem with crouching every time he had to check on his vegetables. It became more and more of a chore as he got older, until he discovered this simple garden idea that involved milk crates. Yep, those sturdy plastic milk crates you packed your comic books or records in when you were much younger. Grandpa started by laying each crate on its side, lining the bottom with burlap coffee sacks or moss scavenged from the oak grove. Then, just like he repurposed the colanders, he'd add potting soil and plant his leafy greens. It was that easy. He'd stack these crates 2 or 3 high to avoid bending and straining his back any further. They were also lightweight and easy to haul around. It was his little mobile garden, and Grandma approved. So next time you spot a lonely crate behind a cafe, rescue it, fill it with hope, and when you bite into a sun-warmed crate-grown tomato, you'll understand that sometimes the best gardens aren't always rooted down. Number 17. Worn-out wooden ladder into a garden showcase. Grandpa had no business on top of that rickety old wooden ladder well past its prime, but it didn't mean he was done with it. It was risky to climb, but perfect for his garden real estate. All he did was lean it securely against the sunniest fence or wall. Each rung had now become its own stage. He'd then place potted plants all the way through. Terracotta pots of parsley on the bottom, peppermint in chipped mugs midway, and colorful annuals reigned supreme at the top to catch everyone's attention. On hot afternoons, he'd stay perched on the bottom step, snapping beans while kids gathered around and heard stories. An instant vertical garden full of charm. Number 16. Tin cans of all sizes as seed starters, scoops, and critter deterrents. Nothing was safe from Grandpa's tinkering. Coffee cans, tomato paste cans, soup cans. His reuse radar picked up on everything. This is a reuse garden idea that people still use today. Here's the thing. Our grandparents didn't run big-budget gardens. They couldn't just head out and buy seed starting pots whenever they needed one. What they could do, though, was create their own. Cleaned with a few holes punched in the bottom, these cans became perfect, and most importantly, free seed starting pots. These cans looked great on Grandpa's ladder garden showcase. He even turned larger cans into handy scoops for soil, compost, or chicken feed. Strips of cans, cut carefully with tin snips with their edges filed smooth, were even strung on twine. Why? To create a clattering curtain to shoo cutthroat birds and critters. An army of upcycled helpers. Number 15. Glass jars into garden lanterns. Now, here's something truly creative and magical. Grandpa never saw an empty glass jar as just empty. He saw them as captured daylight. Those dusty mason jars in the cellar, top to bottom, still sticky? To him, they were unlit lanterns, waiting for their chance to bring a warm glow to your garden when the sun went down. First, we'd scrub them clean, watching decades of grime swirl down the drain. Next, he'd get a copper wire or a rusty handle from an old bucket. Grandpa's knobby hands would then wrap the wire around the jar's neck, winding it snugly but gently. When the magic hour came, when dusk bled into violet, he'd toss a tea light inside, preferably the battery-operated ones, hang the jars from tree branches out in the garden, and voila, from jam jars to living constellations. He'd also drop them on steps or tables around the garden, creating a welcoming and peaceful space for those late-night family stories or twilight strolls. Now go on. Turn yesterday's glass into tonight's wonder. Number 14. Upcycled silverware into plant markers. Orphaned spoons and bent forks found new life in Grandpa's garden as historians. This is a project that brought both personality and practicality to home gardens. He'd gather forks, spoons, and knives that Grandma had given up on and turn them into lovely little plant markers. Here's how. He'd flatten their handles on the anvil. Then he'd etch or write names right onto the metal. Finally, pushed deep beside seedlings, these former silverware stood sturdy through storms. Rain even made the letters gleam. Forgotten what we'd planted and where. These markers had our backs. Yes, these markers are a lot more helpful than you might think. Charming, rustic, and important. Number 13. Picture frames as garden art. Grandpa spent so much time in the garden, whether he was tending to the crops, harvesting them, or just admiring all his efforts. Grandma, on the other hand, wanted him inside on the couch, so he figured out a clever and cute little way to bring the warmth of the indoors out with him. You know all those old picture frames tucked away in the garage or closets? The ones with a bit of wear? Maybe it is missing the glass or has a broken frame? Don't toss them out just yet. Grandpa didn't. Instead, take them to the garden, give them a new, brighter coat of paint, then hang them on the fence or lean them against a tree. With these picture frames, you can create the effect of a living painting framing a bed of blooms or even a vine-covered trellis. And that's not all you can do with your picture frames, you know? Number 12. Picture frame glass as mini cold frames. You know those picture frames you used to create your own living works of art? Well, use the ones that still have their glasses intact to give your seedlings a warm, cozy start, especially in early spring and late fall. Simply hinge the glass frame to a shallow wooden box or place it right over a raised bed like a lid, and you're done. You've just created a cold frame, a greenhouse that traps warmth and protects your baby plants from sudden frosts or strong winds. No need for big expenses, no fancy equipment. Just one quiet afternoon and some old picture frames. Number 11. Broken clay roof tiles as slug havens or garden paths. When there was a heavy storm or strong winds and the clay roof tiles came tumbling down, Grandpa took that opportunity to make some garden upgrades. Chipped or broken clay tiles had multiple lives. He was able to transform them into garden guardians. He laid them concave side down in the lettuce patches, damp, shady ends where slugs checked in and never checked out. Slugs would then congregate right underneath Grandpa's makeshift shelter, making them easier to collect and relocate. Larger, flatter pieces became unique stepping stones for muddy paths in the garden, with their weathered edges cradling moss. Under potted citrus trees, they kept roots drained and cool. The clay roof tiles, which once protected us, now protect our plants. Number 10. Vintage sinks into planters. One thing Grandpa understood is that a lot of the usual household hardware can be somehow repurposed into great planters. He didn't see a cracked sink as broken. He saw a porcelain throne for his plants. That clawfoot tub sink abandoned behind the barn? The chipped enamel kitchen sink found at a yard sale? They weren't scraps. What you're looking at was Grandpa's next big bowl planter with built-in drainage. These sinks were just perfect for planting a mix of herbs, lettuce, or even a riot of colorful flowers. Set them on a pair of bricks outside or on a table. You wouldn't want people to miss the porcelain design, would you? Most importantly, Grandpa's garden was mobile and high enough for easy access. No crouching, no strain, just perfect for his back. And oh boy, the charm was impossible to miss. It's sturdy, durable, and a charming addition to any garden. Number 9. Old drawers into raised beds. When dresser drawers became too wobbly for socks, Grandpa tinkered and turned them into instant raised beds. Truth is, they are also a charming addition to your garden. He started by ripping out the rotten bottom or reinforcing it. Then he'd line each drawer with landscape fabric or a bit of plastic. Next up, drainage. He'd poke a few holes in the bottom and fill each drawer with soil. And finally, plant away. Easy peasy. You can grow anything that makes you happy. Lettuce, herbs, some lovely flowers. Better yet, stack them up. Grandpa always did this to avoid crouching. This created a layered garden that was just beautiful. The chipped paint and worn wood added instant vintage appeal. A drawer once filled with socks and clothes now holds life. Number 8. Shower curtains into garden backdrop. Here's something you probably never thought would end up in your backyard garden, an old, washed-up shower curtain. But Grandpa was actually onto something. He didn't see them as mere bathroom armor. He saw them as a stained glass window made out of vinyl. Those bright, cheerful designs make for fantastic garden backdrops, the kind that actually got kids excited to come help their grandparents out in the back. Just hang one along your fence between two posts or on the back of your porch using garden hooks or clips. They not only beautify the place, but can also hide unsightly areas and block out a bit of wind. You can even use them to create a private corner in the garden for reading while you sip your morning coffee. Grandpa would position these plastic tapestries like sets for nature's theater. Kids loved it, the plants needed it, and Grandpa made it happen. Number 7. Vintage suitcases into retro raised beds. You know those heavy, hard-sided suitcases your grandparents bought so long ago, gathering dust in the attic because they just never want to let go of them? That suitcase that hauled its fair share of memories across the years? Well, there's something else they'd also have no problem hauling: a few plants. Anything can become a planter, these included. Just drill generous drainage holes underneath, line them with landscape fabric or burlap, then fill them with soil. And just like that, you've created instant, quirky raised beds, particularly for shallow-rooted plants like lettuces, radishes, or herbs. Stacked with a smaller hatbox on top, a lovely tiered herb tower. Now you have a garden with stories to tell and a charming centerpiece. Plus, you've successfully decluttered without having to let go of your grandparents' youthful treasures. Number 6. Salvaged fence panels for privacy and vines. As much as you'd love your kids to always get hands-on with you in the garden, sometimes you just want a bit of privacy when you're out there. A serene nook to sit, tend to your herbs, sip some tea without the neighbors or your kids peeking in. I know Grandpa wanted that. So he created just that with some old fence panels. And here's how. Whether they're metal or wood, these salvaged panels can be placed behind a bench, along a patio edge, or to separate certain parts of your garden. And there's more. They also make a great support for climbing plants like clematis and honeysuckle. When this inevitably happens, it instantly adds even more charm to the space. a simple comfort like the kind Grandma swore by, offering a patch of afternoon shade, a little space to yourself, and the kind of quiet that feels like home. It won't be easy keeping the little ones out. Number 5. Plastic milk jugs into cloches, watering cans, and scoops. It's time to meet the Swiss Army knife of junk, the ultimate versatile container, plastic milk jugs. Grandpa's eyes gleamed with joy every time he came across a discarded milk jug, and you're about to find out why. They can be used effectively in almost every facet of the garden. Bottom sliced off? A mini greenhouse cloche for tender seedlings on cold nights. Holes poked in the cap? A gentle sprinkler head for baby basils. Cut them diagonally, and they became sturdy scoops for fertilizer or soil amendments. So, don't just dispose of that Swiss Army knife. Take it to your garden and make good use of it. Grandpa would. Number 4. Curtain rods into plant stakes. In every bent curtain rod, there's a spine waiting to stand tall and give your plants the support they need. Grandpa never saw them as scrap metal, and you shouldn't. Those rods piled in the barn loft with its tarnished brass, they are plant stakes in exile. So, rather than buy expensive supports or those cheap plastic stakes, grab these forgotten curtain rods, even the bent ones, and press them into the soil beside your tomatoes, dahlias, or climbing beans. And your work is done. They're lightweight, easy to handle, and as a bonus, come with decorative finials on the end that add a surprising touch of beauty to your garden. Find a rod, any rod, then wait for the morning a hummingbird perches on the finial, or the afternoon the beans twine the brass like living jewelry. Number 3. Glass bottles into decorative edging and light catchers. Looking for a new creative way to make your garden a lot more charming? Then here's something easy for you. Grandpa had a thing for clear and colored glass bottles. When we saw empty bottles as trash, he called them a mini lighthouse for his plants and earthworms. He turned them into constellations right there in the garden. And here's how. He'd gather these glass bottles. He then dug a shallow trench along a garden bed border and buried them neck down, packing soil firmly around them. That was all. Yeah, it doesn't sound like much now, but when the sun hit them at noon, they painted the soil with honey stripes and emerald puddles. It was a colorful edge that was impossible to miss. Blues and greens were his favorite, like little bits of captured sky and sea. Best part, it's absolutely fun, and there's no wrong way to do it. So why don't you try it? Let your garden wear its jewels. Number 2. Worn-out wheelbarrows into mobile flower gardens. What do you do when your wheelbarrows can no longer keep up? When they're past their primes? Do you just throw them out? Or are they gathering dust in your garage somewhere? Well, sure, Grandpa retired the thing from rolling through the dirt all day, but it still had a purpose. He'd patch the tub if possible, or line it with burlap or landscape fabric, add drainage holes, and fill in soil. Finally, he'd plant a riot of colorful annuals. In no time, this once rusty bucket on wheels was overflowing with candy-striped cosmos and trailing verbena, parked proudly in front of his garden for everyone to see. It was his stunning mobile flower display, and everyone had to see it. It no longer carries dirt, he'd say. It now carries beauty. Pure beauty on a single wheel. Number 1. Teapots and Kettles as mini flower beds. Once again, Grandma's kitchen took the brunt of Grandpa's little brilliant ideas. That teapot missing its spout? The kettle with a hole that Grandma never wanted to let go? He had something else in mind. Rather than leave them to rot away in a cabinet somewhere, Grandpa had a place for them in his garden. All he had to do was plug the holes with a sealant or cork and get to planting, just like that. Now this spoutless teapot has become a floral fountain, spilling wave petunias from its lidless top. A kettle could become home to a bushy marigold or ruffled dianthus, with its spout now steaming with charming blooms. Placed on a stump or bench, they were delightful conversation starters. He'd even arranged them on his lovely ladder garden showcase. Every reused item, no matter how old, told its own story. The boot that trudged through the dirt every day, Grandma's most cherished teacup. It was more than just saving some money. It was about ingenuity and the satisfaction of making something beautiful from something forgotten. So, tell us, which of these ideas did you grow up with, and which has a place in your garden today? Subscribe if today's video brought back some cherished memories.